Expect fireworks on Capitol Hill this week as the House Oversight Committee holds a hearing on the Benghazi attacks. One of the people we'll hear from, Gregory Hicks, number 2 to Ambassador Chris Stevens, who of course was killed that night. Committee Chairman Darrell Issa has already heard from Hicks in private. He gave CBS News a hint of what we'll hear from the witness on Wednesday.
But we know one thing, the talking points were right, and then the talking points were wrong. The CIA knew it was a terrorist attack. The Deputy Chief of Mission, Gregory Hicks, knew it was a terrorist attack. The ambassador, before he died, one of the last words he ever said is, "We're under attack."
That would be a contradiction to how the White House says the attacks unfolded. In fact, Hicks said his jaw hit the floor as he watched Ambassador Rice on those now infamous Sunday show appearances. Other so-called whistleblowers from federal agencies, including the CIA, have provided information to congressional investigators, but are unwilling so far to speak publicly because of a fear of retaliation. Our next guest knows all too well about that culture. He's the filmmaker behind War on Whistleblowers, featuring 4 people whose lives were destroyed after they exposed government wrongdoing. Robert Greenwald interviewed journalists, experts, and the whistleblowers themselves for this project. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you. Nice to be with you.
It's an interesting and important project, but help me understand something, because when you sign up for government, you have certain obligations that are greater than just going into a corporation that is working for profit. And government would be impossible if everyone who had a grievance or had a decision go against them or saw something that they didn't like, not just illegal, but they didn't like, went to the press with that. Isn't there a greater obligation for people who decide to enter government?
Absolutely, and that greater obligation is called the United States Constitution, and it's called democracy. What's wonderful about the 4 whistleblowers that we profiled in War on Whistleblowers, each one of them stood up and spoke out. No personal gain, no personal grievance. It was only about wrongdoing, fraud, breaking the laws, waste of money, and literally saving lives because Franz Geil was willing to speak up.
Well, and Robert, one of those whistleblowers, in fact, that you're referring to, that you highlight in your documentary, spoke up because Humvees were being used overseas. Our soldiers were being killed because they were being blown up by mines and IEDs, when they could have used what's called MRAPs, which would have provided more protection and more safety for the soldiers. And the thing that struck me about that particular story was it seemed like the reason why it was hard for this particular whistleblower to come forward was because of the power of those who were profiting off of the Humvees, the military-industrial complex. Led me to ask the question, how often is it the military-industrial complex that actually is suppressing whistleblowers and playing a role in some of these stories?
Well, unfortunately, the military-industrial complex or the national security state, whatever name you put on it, is playing an extraordinary role because ultimately it's a state, it's an ideology that believes in secret, that allows some to profit while others are punished. And it says there is no such thing as a true whistleblower. It believes they all should be locked up. In fact, the Espionage Act, literally the Espionage Act, which is designed to prosecute spies, was used against Thomas Drake, a true whistleblower. So there's ideology, there's profit, and when you put the two of them together, you've got a pretty lethal combination that insists on silence.
Yeah, and you tell the story in the film of Thomas Drake, who was a U.S. Navy and Air Force veteran who basically identified some real concerns with how surveillance might have been outsourced from the NSA. He flagged those items. He was ultimately proven to be in the right because, as you document, the system that he criticized was discontinued by the NSA. But along the way, he was investigated in 2006. He was charged by Eric Holder's Justice Department under the Espionage Act. They had to back down from that. A judge said that prosecution didn't pass the smell test, and they ended with a plea deal that was widely criticized, where he went from facing 30 plus years for espionage to a plea deal with the government saying that he'd merely misused a computer from the government, nothing more. He now works at an Apple store. Why was it important for you in this film to tell his story, and why does Eric Holder think that the Espionage Act should apply not to traitors but now to whistleblowers working with journalists?
Well, we've been trying to get a statement or a comment from Eric Holder or anybody in the department. Maybe you guys will be able to get one. We haven't been able to see exactly some of these fundamental questions. Why are these patriots? I mean, look, these are real patriots. They're doing this because they believe that their country is important and they want to stand up and they want to speak out. Why they decided to go after Drake, what we understand is that they're trying to make examples out of these whistleblowers to scare away other whistleblowers. And as several of the amazing journalists in the film, Jane Mayer and Dana Priest and Mike Isikoff and Bill Keller all say, it's a toxic environment. It's harder and harder to get whistleblowers to speak to journalists. And what that means is it's harder and harder for democracy to do what it's supposed to do.
Well, and Robert, that's a serious charge you're making because, of course, people are supposed to be prosecuted only for what they did as an individual, not to be made an example of.
Yes, but we know that the way that bureaucracy can function. We know the way organizations function. Dana Priest says the national security state is like a self-licking ice cream cone, which is a wonderful metaphor, and it's all about protecting itself. That's often what we're seeing. It's not about protecting your safety or mine or our dollars. It's about protecting the institution, and it's institutions that thrive on secrecy.
And Robert, yeah, I think the other thing that makes this hard for a lot of folks to swallow is the inconsistency, or some would call it the hypocrisy, of this administration in particular in prosecuting these whistleblowers with the Espionage Act more times than past presidents combined, while also releasing their own leaks, whether to the New York Times or a Hollywood film director, when that kind of information could be seen as beneficial to them. How has that been squared away in your film?
Well, I think you make a very important part. Leaks are not whistleblowing. Leaks are self-serving information giving out to make you or a particular position look better.
Right.
John Brennan leaking on drones is a perfect example. It's designed to make him and the program look better.
Yeah.
Whistleblowers are only about challenging fundamental wrongs, challenging misuse of money, breaking of the law, helping to save lives because of programs that are not the best programs. And there's a world of difference between leakers and whistleblowers. What the film focuses on and tells the personal and powerful story, I think, of each of these whistleblowers is they look at themselves in the mirror and they say, this is wrong. I have to speak up. This is what I believe in.
Yeah.
Robert Greenwald, self-licking ice cream cones. We should invent those. I like the sound of that. Thank you very much.
Sure.